Today I'm going to show you how I make a poor man's burst on a Burl. First thing you do is you get the body sanded down. This is a Burl top on an alder back. Do all your routing and final sanding. This is sanded down to 220. And then what I like to use are Mohawk ultra penetrating stains. I've also used the water-based stuff as well and the trans tint dyes in some of my other videos, but when I do Burl, I like the deep penetrating stain. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put on my gloves and I'm going to use a little paper towel and spread the brown all over the body. So I'm going to do a brown with a red on the outside and a yellow in the middle burst. Alright, so now I get the deep penetrating stain with the cut up rag and I begin to rub it in pretty heavily across the body. Go really thick and just keep rubbing it in, and over time as you start rubbing this in, you'll be pulling up any of the streaks or whatnot. So I put on about 2 or 3 coats of the brown stain first. I just keep going back and forth across the body, making sure it doesn't streak as I'm putting it in, and just keep putting on a couple coats. That way you get a nice thick look, and as it dries, if you see any streaks or anything, you just keep going over it until it sits in correctly. Alright, one of the reasons I use the ultra deep penetrating stain is it doesn't raise the grain. That's not something I want to do when I get down to the final bits here. What you can see is there's still some scratch marks from the 120 from when I was sanding off the curved edges here. So I'll have to clean that up when I'm sanding. This is only 2 coats of this stain. You can do them successively. It leaves a nice dark coat. Really nice stains. This stuff stinks though, so I'm banishing this to the garage now. So what I'll do now is once this dries overnight, I'll hit this with a sander. And what I'll do is I'll start with some red on the outside. And I'll do yellow in the middle. Alright, so now you can see the body's dry. I've got, like I said, a couple scratches right here. And I've got some swirl marks from the sander. So what I'll do is I'll get a less aggressive sander with about 220 and put some 220 paper on. So here I'm fast forwarding, and when I'm sanding, I'll leave just the color in that's soaked in deep and pull off some of the top color. Alright, so I've got 2 cloths. I got my 2 different stains. I got the yellow and the red. And like I said, I'll take the red, I'll start first. I'll soak this in pretty well. Make sure it's a good mix. And I'll just start to feather the edges to get that burst. And like I said in my other videos, you use too much and you have to start over and go back. That's about it. That's all I really want to use for the red. Take that off. Now I get my yellow, and with the clean cloth, here I'm going to go a lot heavier and really mix it in. And what's nice about using these stains is they'll bleed into each other. So now, as I start rubbing the yellow all over the place, I start pushing the red out just enough so that it looks more like a burst and less like I'm rubbing it on. So as you start to see my rubbing it in, I've got more yellow than I do red. So I've got red on the outers. Now I've got a good mix of the colors. All I'll do is do the yellow one more time on the outer, because I see I'm getting a lot of bleeding. So I'll take my red again and feather back in the red. Now you can start to see the red show up a little bit more, but now it's more impregnated with the yellow. And then you'll want to do the burst like in Les Paul, which is kind of like this. So as you're rubbing this in, then make sure you're rubbing it evenly, especially around the control cavity, that you get the right colors. So when you start to see streaks or lines, there's a line forming here. Come back with my yellow, hit it up in the center, and just push the colors around. Towards the end, I'll get my bigger brush, bigger cut here, and I'll rub it all in. That way I'm starting to soak up any extra stain that's left over. And I'll pull out some of the unevenness of the colors that exist. So far that's looking pretty good. See the nice coloring. It's got the yellow, red, there's a little bit of more of a line, so I'll play with more yellow there. You know, try and get the yellow to look left side to right side evenly. It's kind of hard to do, but over time you figure it out. As I said, these stains allow you to push the color around a little bit more. Alright, so I got a pretty good burst, kept this off. And now what I'll do is I'll let this sit for a couple hours and I'll come back. I'll sand it with 320 down to 400. Alright, now we're about an hour later. 2 hours later, you can see top is dried. I'll take some 600 grit here, sand this off one more time, and then pop it with the yellow. Alright, so now you can see I ended up taking off a decent amount of color, but you can still see the red on the edge and the yellow. So now when I hit it with that yellow, the yellow is going to pop pretty good here. I got my yellow and red rag here. Get nice and thick. Rub it back in. I like to do a little bit of the edges so you get the edges fading in. Clean up some of the sawdust as well. Alright, so here we are after I sanded down with 600 and added some yellow back in. The last thing I did is I took my red rag and put a little yellow on it, and then I just one more time feathered this on and then went back with the yellow and rubbed it all back in so I get a little bit less coloring. Next thing I'll do now is bring this to the basement and put some true oil on it, and I'll do probably about 6 or 7 coats. Here's the finished guitar body with about 4 or 5 coats of true oil on it. The trick to finishing with true oil is to leave the first coat on very thick and let it dry for 24 hours to 40 hours so it gets hard, and then put coats on after that. Then when you're done with that, you get about 4 or 5 good coats on. You take some boiled linseed oil and some 320 grit sandpaper and you sand off any of the high spots. What happens is you kind of let that dry, wipe it off very lightly, and you'll get a kind of grain filled from sanding the true oil down. It's a little bit too bright to catch the fading here correctly, but as I pull away from the light you can see the yellow in the middle and the red on the outside to get that nice poor man's burst. Any questions, send them over to me. Thanks.